YouTube, back at it again with another video. I see that Chucky Tortilla Flat videos has got a lot of views, so I'm gonna do a series where basically I'll do reactions to pretty much different games to give my thoughts on what I think to it. Basically give y'all advice and shit. But we're gonna look up the leader of Tookie Williams, the Crip leader.
The Crip King, the King of the Crips, and the Crip Godfather are just a few of the names that have been used to describe Stanley Tookie Williams, the man who called himself the co-founder of the Crip gangs in Los Angeles, California. And his story has been told hundreds of times. The infamous Crip leader, convicted of violent crimes and sentenced to death by execution. But what many of the stories are missing is what happened before Tookie became a Crip, why he became a Crip, and the reason he later apologized for his part in creating the Crips. Tookie was born Stanley Tookie Williams III on December 29, 1953 in New Orleans, Louisiana. But from the day he was born, everyone in his family just called him Tookie. His mother was 17 years old when she had him, and his father left before Tookie's first birthday, leaving Tookie's mother to raise.
That's one thing I gotta mention. For you niggas that is I noticed that like my audience is 99% boys, so if you a nigga out here and you abandon your kids, shame on you, first off. You a bitch ass nigga. But if you ain't got kids right now, I know for a fact in the future you might have kids. There's a fact that you probably will have kids. Gen Z, y'all gonna have sex one day. I'm gonna make a video about that one day, but yeah, like, damn, I lost thought. Yeah, don't fucking abandon y'all motherfucking kids when y'all get kids.
Him on her own. But being a black woman living in the South in the 1950s, it was almost impossible for Tookie's mother to find a way to make good money. So in 1959, in search of a better life for her and her son, she and 6-year-old Tookie boarded a Greyhound bus headed for Los Angeles, California. When Tookie and his mother got to LA, they moved into an apartment on the west side of South Central. The apartment and the neighborhood looked beautiful from the outside. Green manicured lawns and rows of perfectly built 3- and 4-bedroom homes. But the neighborhood wasn't anything like it appeared to be, and was actually one of the most dangerous areas in all of Los Angeles, with high rates of unemployment, poverty, and street crime. Drugs, violence, prostitution, all of it was right outside Tookie's front door. The first time he went outside to play, he got into a fist fight with kids from the neighborhood who jumped him to see how tough he was. He was 6 years old. From that day on, Tookie learned that conflict and brutality was a regular thing in South Central. Every day.
See, that's what a lot of niggas think. I ain't gonna lie, bruh. I kind of carry the same mindset, but in a different way. I'm violent if you violent. Like, if you show me violence, then I'm gonna show you violence, my nigga. You get what I'm saying? But if you ain't violent, then I ain't gonna show you violence. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I noticed, like, with a lot of, like, kids and shit. Like, a lot of, like, basically, what's the fucking word for them niggas? For us. It's called, not immigrants, minorities and shit. For minorities, y'all ever notice for not minorities, if you a minority, you probably notice for a fact, you gotta fight a lot more. Like, you just tend to fight more.
He stepped outside, he'd witnessed different acts of cruelty and rage. Fighting neighbors, hustlers preying on the weak and vulnerable, and criminals violently taking what didn't belong to them. Everybody was at war over something. The cold and tough way of his neighborhood wasn't the only thing Tookie was subjected to as a kid. He also had to deal with racist 1960s police officers who would harass and attack South LA residents of all ages without cause. With constant exposure to violent behavior coming from all sides, Tookie's young mind began to believe that all the brutality around him.
Also, you gotta think, bro, like, it's also the cops' fault. back in the days, like, it wasn't what it was nowadays, where cops could actually, like, cops are filmed now, so they gotta so-called act like they ain't fucking racist when they really is. They motherfucker was racist as fuck back then. Back then, you called the cops. The cops might beat up the nigga. They might beat up the nigga that called the cops type shit. Like, they was on racist shit. So, basically, back then, a lot of people probably felt like they couldn't even call the police, or they couldn't even do much with the police, because the police was just racist as fuck. So, why the fuck would I call these racist ass motherfuckers to come help me, knowing damn well they don't give a fuck about me? And people were like, in the news, were like, why is crime so high? Why is the police always called? The police is always called there, but they racist as fuck, so they don't really give a fuck about these people. So they just gonna keep letting them kill each other. That's why the crime was so up back then. And crime is still a little bit up in certain neighborhoods, because the cops don't even want to come there sometimes. On some real shit. Some cops don't even go to certain hoods. I swear to God.
Was normal. He became desensitized, numb to it all, and he developed a do whatever it takes to survive attitude. While Tookie was getting an education in the streets, he was also attempting to get an education in the classroom. He was a good student. He was quiet, kept to himself, and enjoyed reading. And all throughout elementary school, he got A's and B's in class. But Tookie couldn't escape the world around him. When he was 12, he started smoking weed and sniffing glue. By the time he was in high school, he was on to heavier drugs. His grades dropped, and he'd skip school to go to downtown LA and make money hustling or stealing. Tookie's mother tried to steer him right. When Tookie was young, she taught him the fundamentals of right from wrong. And as a punishment for bad behavior, he'd get regular beatings. And when Tookie got older, she would take him to church 2 and 3 times a week, and had him seeing a psychiatrist to treat him, because she believed there was something wrong with him, mentally.
Congratulations. I ain't gonna lie, Tookie's mom, she did better than Chucky's mom. I ain't gonna lie. Chucky's mom, 5 days missing, that's some bullshit. At least she was trying with Tookie ass. Tookie was just bad as fuck. And bro, I do not, at the same time, I don't put all the blame on the parents. I put it on the kids at the same time too. People be like, they're product of their environment. Yeah, you grow up around violence, but just because you grow up around violence don't mean you have to be violent. Common sense would tell you that. Like, bruh.
There was nothing wrong with Tookie's mind. Tookie would later say in interviews that growing up, he was a very normal child who was living in an abnormal environment. Eventually, Tookie got expelled from school for stealing from the cafeteria.
And see, that's another thing that people don't notice. He probably was in the neighborhood where, I ain't gonna lie, in some neighborhoods, he probably was in one of those neighborhoods where it'd be like 80, 40 niggas, like, not 80 niggas, that's OD. I meant to say like 30, 40 niggas outside doing the exact same thing as he is, around the same age as him, so he automatically gonna just think it's normal. He gonna be like, oh, yep, I ain't different from these niggas. I just think I'm different because I'm the leader of these niggas. I'm in no way different. This is the same as the Chucky and the tortilla flats. This is the exact same. It's thousands of kids like this. And my problem is, motherfuckers be like, that's just the way it is, bro. We need to put a stop to that fucking ignorant ass mindset and that other ignorant mindset that it's too late. Once you in the game, you stuck in the game, bro. Do you hear how that sounds, bro? The only way you stuck in the game is if you join the game. You get what I'm saying? Or the only way you stuck in a game is if you join the game, because the game is the only one that's going to force you. But if you're just a regular drug dealer, bro, quit while it's still good. Don't even join the game. I'm going to make a video on why if you a street nigga, don't even join the game.
His mother moved him to a new school, and he got expelled again for fighting. In all, Tookie was expelled from 7 different high schools around LA before graduating. The one benefit that came with Tookie
at least he graduated
always transferring schools is that he was able to meet people from outside his neighborhood, with many of the people being gang members and gang leaders. This gave Tookie an advantage over others because he learned firsthand what gangs ran certain areas of town. Although the Blood and the Crip gangs didn't exist yet, there were still a lot of black neighborhood gangs that did, and many of them approached Tookie to join them. But Tookie refused. Tookie actually despised gangs at first. He didn't like the bully mentality of gang members, and he preferred to keep to himself or with a close group of homeboys he grew up with. But the gangs didn't leave Tookie alone. One day after school, a classmate who was a gang member jumped Tookie for his money, beating Tookie so bad he had to be hospitalized. This made Tookie's hatred for gangs even worse, and he began planning on ways he would retaliate. Then, after one of his closest friends also got jumped, Tookie vowed to go against all gangs. He got better at fighting and would never back down from a fight with a gang member. And if he lost, he would fight that same person every day until he won. Tookie gained a reputation as being one of the best.
Respect that, I ain't gonna lie.
Fighters in South Central Los Angeles, knocking people out with one punch. Tookie's determination to defend himself and friends from gang members was so strong that people from other schools and neighborhoods would come get him when they needed help or protection from bullies. As Tookie's reputation grew, so did his drug use. When he was 15, he overdosed on pills, downers that were called Red Devils, and he had to go to the hospital to get his stomach pumped. The day after getting out of the hospital, he was arrested and sent to juvenile hall for drug use. This was the first day of many Tookie would have at juvenile hall between the ages of 15 and 17. During his time in juvenile hall, Tookie learned how to lift weights. He became addicted to transforming his body and becoming bigger and stronger. He also obsessed over strategies on how he would use his newfound physical strength to continue defending himself.
That's one thing I love about the 80s and 90s. I think this was the 70s, actually, shit, since this was the Crips and shit. But at least them niggas used to fight and shit. And think about it, that was the 70s and 80s wasn't that long ago. And there's generations of gangbanging. That should tell you something. They died very, very young. Think about it. We still in his teenage years, and we halfway through the video. Where does this end? You get what I'm saying? But yeah, like, the thing I love back in the days is, like, them niggas used to fight. Look at this nigga. This nigga thinking about how can I take the gangs fighting niggas. I love to hear it, bro. Y'all gotta clap it up, bro. Nowadays, bro, it wouldn't be like that. If a nigga in jail and he thinking about taking over the gangs, he gonna be like, how do I shoot these niggas? Fuck you talking about?
Friends and family against neighborhood gangs. Tookie's plan was to get out of juvenile hall and form a group that would challenge all the street gangs in the neighborhood. During his last reevaluation hearing before being released from juvenile hall, Tookie was asked by a youth counselor, "What are your plans once you're released back into society?" Tookie replied, "I plan on being the leader of the biggest gang in the world." And as soon as Tookie was released, he got to work on his plan, which didn't take long.
Pause. They released him after he said that shit? What the fuck?
At all. He already had a loyal group around him that was ready and looked up to him. And with his growing reputation around South Central, his transition into a gang leader was never questioned. But Tookie's gang wasn't actually supposed to be a gang in the traditional sense. When they first got started, they didn't even have a gang name, and they didn't want to be associated with any street gangs. Their only mission was to retaliate and protect themselves from gang members who threatened them. And they carried out this mission daily. Even though they were much smaller than the already established gangs in the neighborhood, Tookie and his group made noise throughout the entire city as they savagely attacked unsuspecting gang members, one after the other. And Tookie made sure that everyone he attacked knew it was him who did it. Then, in 1971, a few months after Tookie began his rally against...
You see how that hate cycle just began? That nigga said, I hate gangs. I don't want to become a gang. Gang members jumped him. He had options. Either get out the hospital, get a job. You around 15 years old. So get out the hospital, get a job, and forget them niggas that jump you. Because them niggas that jumped you, they gonna face their karma in a different way. You trying to go out and try and search for karma, it always is gonna come back on you. You should have just let that shit go. Cause now look at it. You didn't let that shit go. Now we got millions of Crips out here killing people. We got millions of Crips out here jumping people for no reason. Cause of you. Now motherfuckers be out here like, oh well, he got jumped by the gang members. Look at all what he started. Because he couldn't take an ass whooping. Because he could take an ass whooping, but his pride couldn't take that ass whooping, if you get what I'm saying.
Street gangs. He met Raymond Washington. Raymond Washington was from the east side of South Central and had started the Crips a few years earlier. After a few conversations between Tookie and Raymond Washington, the two decided to form an alliance between Tookie's group on the west side and Raymond's Crip gang on the east side. Tookie and Raymond believed that uniting the two sides would make them an unstoppable force that no Los Angeles gang would be able to defeat. And within a few weeks, they had become one giant Crip gang. But even after joining forces with Raymond, Tookie still didn't like the idea of being a gang. And for a short time, he continued to try and keep up with his original plan of only attacking as a means of self-defense. But as the revenge attacks against other gangs became more violent, and the Crips got bigger and took on more enemies, the shift into Tookie becoming an LA gang member was inevitable. Soon, Tookie became exactly what he was trying not to be. He became the same kind of bully he had set out to protect himself and others from. He would intimidate people and take whatever he wanted. Tookie later said in his autobiography that he and the Crips terrorized the city and made it a living hell. By the time Tookie was 20 years old, the Crips outnumbered all other gangs in LA, and Tookie was rapidly recruiting more members. People started calling him the Crip King. He was the most known and the most targeted gang member in Los Angeles. Rival gang members wanted him dead, and the LA Police Department had him under constant surveillance, labeling Tookie as the Crips' leader and blaming or arresting him for every reported incident involving the Crips.
The sad truth, and I'm still gonna touch on this, is if it was a nigga like him back in the days and we took him and tried to put him in here, he would have died. He would have died first year. He wouldn't have made it to 16. Niggas out here die younger and younger. If he would have tried to fight all his enemies and shit, try and fight niggas and shit, he would have died. And even if he wouldn't have gotten a gun, even if he would have got a gun, I still would have thought he would have died. He just was too big, my nigga. Think about the niggas nowadays, basically, that's the leader of the gangs. They either out of weight, they really out of shape, out of weight. You ever notice that? Gangbangers back then, they was buff as dog shit. Gangbangers now, they skinny as shit. Or they really just built like a refrigerator. They built like my ass, fat as shit. Like, goddamn, bitch. I seen some buff-ass street niggas, don't get me lie, but, like, they usually be skinny as hell, skinny buff, and they be, like, malnourished as hell. Back then, they used to be a little bigger, at least.
In the middle of all of this, Tookie also had a full-time job as a counselor at a youth group home in Compton, California. He'd been hired.
He had a job. You get what I'm saying? He could have just left the streets behind. He had a job. You get what I'm saying? Sure, he joined that job while he was in the game, but he was a respected gang member. He respectable in the game. You could just, like, fold your flag when you respectable and shit. If he was, like, a peon-ass gang member, then, yeah, he couldn't do that shit, but since look at him, he like respectable and he the leader, he could fold his flag and just become a regular nigga. He just decided not to.
The job by the group home's director, who had met Tookie when Tookie was a kid doing time at a camp for troubled youths. Tookie's job at the group home was to counsel 12 and 13-year-olds and work to keep them from joining gangs, which wasn't easy to do, since most of the kids already knew who Tookie was and wanted to be just like him. Everyone knew who Tookie was. All the stories of his fearless acts against rival gangs had been shared and spread throughout the streets of LA for years, and it lifted him to legendary status. And not only was he recognized as Crip royalty, he was also becoming a well-known bodybuilder, getting so big he was asked to appear on the popular 70s variety show, The Gong Show. He even had plans to compete in a major bodybuilding competition, but was denied the opportunity to compete after it was discovered he was a gang leader. Promoters of the competition feared Tookie's reputation would bring negative attention to the sport. But Tookie continued lifting weights every day, and he got to where he could bench press 500 pounds. But everything else in Tookie's life was becoming unstable. After getting fired from his job, his life became all about bodybuilding, partying, gangbanging, women, and drugs. And his drug...
And he the leader of the gang banging. He the leader of the Crips. And his life is falling apart. What should I tell you? See, karma is best hit when niggas don't know karma is best hit. You get what I'm saying? Karma hits you better when you don't know it hits you. You get what I'm saying? Truly, when something bad happens to you, you got to truly look and see why that happened to you. You might find the answer. Get what I'm saying? But yeah, we gonna put part 2. We gonna have part 2 probably tomorrow though. But hope y'all enjoyed this part. Alright, we'll be back though.